Hey there, and welcome to part 2, where we're going to make barrel smoke and a bunch of muzzle flashes for fully automatic fire. Alright, let's jump into barrel smoke. You're going to want to make a whole new composition for this one. So go back to your project window, right click, go to new composition, title it barrel smoke. My footage is 1920 by 1080, so I'm just going to choose that from the presets. Make it 10 seconds long, and hit OK. Go into your new timeline, right click, go to New Solid, title this one Barrel Smoke, set it to black, hit OK. And I recently found a really cool preset that's going to help kickstart our smoke process. You can find it over in your Effects and Presets window. If you don't have this window, you can get it from the window drop-down from the top menu bar. In the search bar that it has, type in Fog, and you should get Fog Lights under Animation Presets and Backgrounds. Drag it onto the solid. This turns your solid into a pre-animated, pre-set up 2D smoke layer. It's freaking awesome. There is one thing we want to change though. With it selected, go to the Effects Controls panel, and under Fractal Noise, go to Transform, drop that down, and set the scale to 200. Go back to your main footage layer. You can probably just switch over to its tab at the top of the timeline. Open up the project window on the left, and drag and drop that barrel smoke comp that we just created right underneath the muzzle flash in your timeline. Set its mode to screen, and hit G to get your pen tool. And now draw this egg-shaped mask around the muzzle flash. With the barrel smoke layer selected, hit M and M again, and for the feather, let's set it to 170. Now we want to move the anchor point for the smoke. Still got that smoke selected, right? Go ahead and hit Y, find the little gray cross in your composition window, and drag that over to the end of the barrel. Now let's trim the beginning part of the smoke layer. With it selected, and your playhead set to this muzzle flash, hit Alt, open bracket. Then I'm going to go forward about 10 frames, so I'm going to hit page down 10 times, and then hit Alt, close bracket to trim the excess on the end. Go back to the first frame of the smoke layer, hit S to get the scale property, set a keyframe there, move forward 2 frames with page down, and set the scale to 150 here. Go forward 7 frames or something, whatever you want to do, it's your life, and set another keyframe at 270. Hit V to get your selection tool back. Let's zoom out a little bit, and we're going to use this whole space here to animate it. Make sure your playhead is at the beginning of the smoke. Hit P to get the position settings, and set a keyframe there. Move forward 7 frames again, and drag the smoke up to the top right. Now come over to the beginning of this line that we just made. You're going to see a little square right there. Right-click on it, go to Keyframe Interpolation, and under Spatial Interpolation, set it from Auto Bezier to Bezier. Hit OK, and now you've got this handle that if you drag the end around, you can start changing the trajectory of your smoke. And now we want to do the same thing to the other keyframe, but it can be kind of hard to see it under that anchor point cross. So just hit page up 1 time to move back a frame, and now you can see that little square again on the right. Go ahead and right click on that guy, do the same thing, keyframe interpolation, spatial interpolation, Bezier, and drag this handle downward a little bit to make a slight curve in the trajectory. Now once again, let's go back to that first frame of the barrel smoke. With the barrel smoke selected, hold Shift and hit S, and while still holding Shift, hit T to bring the scale and opacity settings up alongside the position setting. Hit the stopwatch to make a keyframe for opacity here, and then change it to 40%. Go forward by a lot. I think I went 15 frames or so. And change the opacity to 0. That will automatically give us a keyframe there. And now you've got smoke flying up and away. Let's fit our frame to the composition window again. And in the timeline, shrink the work area to just this first shot. And RAM preview it. Whoa, look at that! If you need the smoke to be tinted a certain color for the lighting in your scene or whatever, do that by going to its Effects Controls panel, right-clicking, going to Color Correction, and Hue and Saturation. Tick the Colorize box near the bottom. You'll notice it turns your smoke a pink color, and drag that second number in the Colorize hue to cycle through the colors. I'm going to give mine a slight bluish tint, which is around 210, because that goes along with the color grading that I gave this shot earlier. Obviously it doesn't make a big difference in my scene, but depending on the environment and the lighting, it could matter. Now I have him shooting 2 shots in the beginning of this clip here, so let's go ahead and make a new, unique muzzle flash. Select the muzzle flash side layer, hit Command or Control D to duplicate it, and drag that new duplicated one forward 2 frames. As you can see, they look exactly the same, which is totally uncool. So to make it unique, we're going to mess with some settings. First, go to its fractal noise effect, and on that number next to brightness, click and drag as high as 40 or 50, or even as low as -130. And you can see the drastic difference. I'm going to set this to something like -40. Under that is Transform. Go ahead and hit the drop-down arrow for that. And for the Offset Turbulence, click and drag on the numbers again, and you'll see the underlying fractal noise layer slide around, while the mask that creates the muzzle flash itself stays in place. The third setting I would change to create a randomness in these muzzle flashes is the evolution. And as you can see, a slight change in these numbers will give you a big difference. Besides changing the fractal noise settings, I would also suggest messing around with the mask a little bit to change this muzzle flash's shape. Down in the timeline, hit M and M again to get your masks, and go ahead and play around with the shape of the mask to make something different. And you can really brighten this thing up if you just totally turn off mask number 2. And you can do that by going down into the timeline and changing mask number 2's mode to none. That looks kind of cool. I'm not going to leave it like that though, so I'm going to switch it back. But with this mask selected, I am going to move it a little bit more to the right in the composition window. And I think that's enough tweaking for now. So let's line it up with the barrel again, make sure the muzzle flash itself is selected, and make sure you have your selection tool by hitting the V key, drag it to the end of the barrel, and then hit W for your rotation tool, and line it up with the barrel or just the rest of the gun. Since we moved the muzzle flash, let's hit Y for the anchor point tool again, and move this little anchor point cross back to the end of the barrel. Next, I want to show you how to duplicate and randomize the barrel smoke for a fully automatic weapon. Now, normally, I would not put barrel smoke on every shot. I would put it on maybe every 5th or 6th shot, but because I only have 2 muzzle flashes here, I'll do it now just so you can see how it's done. Select that barrel smoke, duplicate it, change its order in the timeline so that it's right underneath the second muzzle flash. With the playhead set to the beginning of that second muzzle flash and your barrel smoke still selected, hit open bracket, and the barrel smoke will snap to right where you want it. Hit P for its position. I'm going to zoom out so I can see what I'm doing. Hit the eyeball on that second muzzle flash so you can see the smoke better. That's all the way to the left on the timeline. That'll hide the muzzle flash. For starters, we're going to realign it with the front of the barrel. In the timeline, box select these two keyframes. Then, up in the composition window, click on the far one, which should be a solid square like this. And now you can move the whole animation around the composition window without messing it up. Just make sure the first keyframe lines up with the barrel. Now click anywhere in the composition to deselect those 2 points, and click and drag that second one, bringing it down a little bit. The trajectory has gotten all funky now, so just mess around with these handles until you have almost a straight line. Down the timeline, we already have our position setting open, so let's hit Shift-T to also see our opacity. It has the keyframes we set up before, but let's change this first one to 30%. And hit Shift-S to bring up the scale. And change this first keyframe to something around 50%. Move to the second keyframe, set it to something like 75. Unhide this muzzle flash by hitting the eyeball on the left. And you know what, before we preview this, go back to the opacity for the smoke and drag that second keyframe in about halfway. And preview it. So those are some techniques on how to randomize your next barrel smoke. But when you go ahead and make a dozen or so muzzle flashes, I would suggest putting one barrel smoke on every fourth or so. Next, let's make another frame brightener. This one's easy. Select it, duplicate it, and move it. I keep it under the barrel smoke. Make sure it's lined up with the muzzle flash by moving it forward 2 frames. Now let's duplicate the environmental glow layer. I see I should have really changed the label color on this one. So if you go over here on the left, click the little light blue box to change this. I like to set it to yellow. Now select that guy, duplicate it, and move it up only in the order on the timeline, but don't move it left or right yet. Once you've moved it up, underneath the orange frame brightener, be sure that the playhead is sitting on the second muzzle flash that we're working with. And hit Alt close bracket first, and then Alt open bracket. This is important because this isn't any old clip. This is the actual footage layer with our actors on it, and it always has to line up with the original one on the bottom layer. And now we can simply move the masks that we made last time into place for this one. So hit M, select the first mask. You may want to maximize the screen, and move it into place on the front of the gun. I just noticed that it kind of looks like a dog. If you want to rotate it, just double click on one of the points and you're going to get this manipulation box. Move your cursor outside one of the corners and you'll be able to rotate it. Double click anywhere to get out of that and start fixing all the little sections that have gotten out of place. Then just double click on the other masks and move them into place. I think you're getting it. This is a good time to be sure that you're happy with the look of your muzzle flashes before duplicating them for the potentially dozens or hundreds that you might need in your film. So before we move on, I want to make some quick adjustments to the muzzle flashes themselves. I'll select one of the muzzle flashes, and in its effects on the left, I'm going to go down to directional blur and set its blur length to 45. I'm going to go over to the other muzzle flash and do the same, setting its directional blur's blur length to 45. Then I'm going to go up to this one's CC toner settings, go into its highlights color box, and just drag these arrows on the color spectrum down a little bit, making them a little more red. I'm ending up on the color code FFB278. And then I'll do the same thing for the other muzzle flash's CC toner. Lastly, I want to select this orange frame brightener, hit T, and change its opacity to 10%. And then I'm going to do the same thing with the other one. Now tweak these settings until you get something that works for you and your scene. Alright, so once you're happy with these initial muzzle flashes, we're going to duplicate them for the rest of the shots that occur in this scene. So I'll pause the recording here, make all the muzzle flashes I need to, and come back and show you what I did. So I'm back, and I now have 13 muzzle flashes total. In a crazy scene like this, it can be hard to know when to actually place a muzzle flash, or even how many to make. But use your instincts, create a rhythm to the shot, and give it that feeling of a beginning, a middle, and an end. I tried to make each muzzle flash a unique size and shape, but because everyone's footage is going to be different, each effect will require a bit of creative tweaking on your part to match your scene. Now, I found that it looks best when the last muzzle flash in a group is much larger than the rest. I believe that it's because when a lot of shots have been fired very rapidly, it's most likely that your brain is going to pick out that last one above all the others to remember. So, it being the largest just gives it that visual impact that you want. I upped the directional blur by a lot on some of these, as you can see here. This one I set to 150 in blur length. After these first two initial shots, as my actor moved more into frame, it became necessary to add another environmental glow mask for his right arm. There's actually a really easy way to do this, and I'll show you how. Let's delete this one that I made here. Select one of the other masks, and hit Command or Control D, and just drag this new one to wherever it's needed. This is much faster than drawing a new mask. You don't even have to redo all the feather and opacity settings. Then, you can even copy and paste this mask onto the other environmental glow layers that come up later in the scene. Alright, I'll go over here and delete this next one so I can show you what I mean. On this previous layer, double-click and copy the right arm mask that we just made, and paste it right onto the following environmental glow layer. I'll also click on each of these environmental glow layers so you can see where I placed these lighting masks. And then at one point, both of them happened to fire a shot at the same time. But the front of her gun ended up really close to the end of the frame. So I just put the muzzle flash over the entire front half of her gun. If it was any further to the right, you wouldn't be able to see it, and because everything happened so fast, it looks like it's supposed to be there. On these last few shots, I had to make sure we had environmental lighting on her arms and the top of her gun. The last thing I did was to add smoke, but only on a few of these shots. And because his gun started to get close to the edge of the frame, I sent the smoke straight up sometimes, as you can see here, just so the viewer's subconscious could catch that there was smoke there for at least one frame. Smoke can sometimes be the toughest part. You don't want to add too much or too little, so get creative and try a few different things until it looks right for your shot. Alright, so that's how to make fully automatic muzzle flash fire. Hey, are you a visual effects artist in need of royalty-free effects for your shootout scenes? Well, after a year of working on it, I now have just the pack for you, and it's for sale on my website. It's called the Gun Warfare Action Pack, and I made it specifically for shootout scenes. It's got stuff like muzzle flashes, barrel smoke, blood hits, bullet shells, and gun sound effects. There's over 150 effects from 7 categories. I'll put a link at the end where you can get some more information. Hey, if you could, give me a like, a subscribe, and a comment, and I'll keep bringing you videos. Alright guys, catch you later.